Welcome back to Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Prowler only. Last time we took on Elatrion, and this time we'll be taking on some more generic hyper monsters. The first one is going to be, if I can find it, Hyper Plesioth. Quest is called Diabolical Deluge and has us hunting a Hyper Plesioth in the jungle. Go ahead and take the quest. We have our Legiacris Anchor equipped, the Cross R version. Go ahead and head on out. Alright, Hyper Plesioth is not that difficult. It has about 14,500 HP, and most definitely, if optimized well, can be a sub 10-minute run. In fact, it was very close to being one on my first attempt with it, just practicing. This is going to be a bit slow at the start, but usually it is with Plesioth. You can try to do the frog thing, but I don't really ever find that too consistent. And he'll get out of the water pretty quickly in G rank at the very least. But he also gets out of it pretty quickly in other ranks as well. It's more the earlier games where he just kind of likes to camp. And once we do get to a point where our gauge is pretty filled up, we can start throwing Mega Boomerangs at him in the water when he does decide to just get in there. So it definitely is not an issue. Our main hit zones we're going for are the face and the stomach. Stomach is soft. The face has the chance to be charged with hyper, which makes it even weaker, so that's nice as well. And again, he's very large. I've talked about this before, but compared to the cat, he's a very, very, very large monster. So aside from maybe the mini crown variations, he's probably going to go over you with a lot of his attacks. So his hit checks and whatnot are not going to be as scary. However, you still don't want to be right in front of him, because if you look at the dust cloud when the hip check does go off, that's where the hitbox about is. Obviously, it's a dust cloud, so you can't tell the exact range of it, but it goes up pretty far. So if you're in front of him immediately, you're not too safe. And even off to the sides, you look like you're in under him, but sometimes it will not go over you. But sometimes it will, which is a luxury that we do have. We're just going to go at him here. We have our boomerangs buffed up, though, and since he is a Piscine wyvern, or a Piscine wyvern, I think that's how it's pronounced. I've never really looked too far into it. I've heard it pronounced multiple different ways. I think Piscine is the correct way you pronounce it, though. Certainly sounds better. But generally with those monsters, since they have the sort of flying wyvern skeleton, they have very similar moves. They have the tail sweeps, they have the head turns, and especially since they're longer than the usual flying wyvern, it kind of sets you up for some really nice boomerang snipes along the head, since the head is a bit larger and you can kind of get your boomerang to hover in it a little bit. It's not the complete end of the world if it doesn't. I think the neck is an okay hit zone, but obviously you're really wanting to hit that face as much as possible. Things you want to be careful of are that sweeping beam that he does. Even though it looks like a straightforward beam, he will shake it sometimes. It will go off to your right if he's looking straight at you, and his left. So you're fine if you're off to the left side, your left being that side. But if you're off to the right, don't do anything with long commitment, or else you can be hit by that and knocked out of a Mega Boomerang or something. We're up to 4 bars of gauge. I do have Go Fight Win as well, so I may actually try to throw this. We're safe here, even if he jerked it around, so that's fine. And I will say something to note about the tail sweeps, and it is something I learned at least specifically about Young Katku in Monster Hunter 4. And I think Gravios as well, is that in low rank at the very least, and this could change in G rank, tail sweeps can only go in one direction. So I don't remember the exact direction, but you would figure out which direction the tail sweep favors and then stick on the other side. That way you have a warning whenever he does do it. However, Plesioth does not follow that rule. He can just kind of do it wherever. The only bright side is that it is a bit slower. So if you're not in the middle of an attack, you can adept it somewhat easily, as long as you're, paying attention and you're far enough away. But you saw he did it to his left there, and I don't think they can combo it in multiple different directions depending on the monster. I certainly don't think Plesioth can. I think some other monsters can, and that may just be weird G-rank shenanigans. But for the most part, you see he's doing it to the left again, but I've had him do it to the right, which is something you don't want to be too favorable towards. I'll stick on the right here and show that maybe he will, and we'll get whacked by it. But, I mean, if he does it, maybe I just completely forgot about it or looked at it wrong. But generally, since we're ranged, we can stay at range and we don't have to worry about tail sweeps. But if you have any short-ranged weapons, and by that I mean any just regular melee weapons, You don't want to be that close to him anyways because of the hip checks and stuff, but you have to because you don't have as much range for how large he is. If he were smaller, then it'd be like a Katku. You know, you'd be able to get close to him and just roll out of the way of his attacks. And funnily enough, he's actually being pretty generous here with those single tail sweeps. So maybe I was just watching it wrong, but maybe it just applies to all monsters like that. They can only do it in one direction. Yeah, because he's only doing it in one direction here, which is really good. Again, it could be just that he's favoring it right now and he'll start pulling out the other one later. And I guess it's also possible that if they get enraged, they can also change the direction. That's not out of the ordinary for a monster to change its move. But I don't know of any off the top of my head, so it's very possible but that's not the case. But again, since we have range, we're going to abuse that as much as possible. I get hit by that. And it does sweep around a lot more than something like a Katku tail sweep or even a Rathalos tail sweep would. And it's not really because the attack's that different. It's just because the size change is so drastic that you're going to feel the change in the moves because they just go so much farther due to the size of the monster itself. All right, we're in the next area. I'm going to try to get one of these out after he attacks. I'll probably do a standing water beam. This is the ideal one. You don't want the sweeping beam too much. You can stand in under it, but it's nicer to just have to dodge in one spot and not worry too much about it. This is a bit greedy. He will move away. I maybe could have held that. It might clip his face. No. I maybe should have ended a little further upward to have a chance to actually hit the tail at the very least. I don't think the tail is a terrible hit zone, but the face and stomach are large enough, and by himself, he's a large enough monster that you shouldn't have too many issues actually reaching those with a boomerang cat specifically. Again, if you're using a melee weapon, you're going to have more tough times actually trying to get to that. That's why you're trying to wait for the face to do water beams and stuff so you can get close. But obviously you still have to worry about the beams that do move around and whatnot. Like here we can stand in under this and be just fine. The feet will obviously do chip damage to us if we're too close, but other than that, we're okay. You still have to watch out for the tackles, and that tackle will be also important later for the other monster we're fighting. But it's not that bad with Plesioth. In fact, you can actually punish it pretty nicely if you do have enough gauge, which I actually do, so I will look for an opportunity to use that. And as usual, Plesioth will lower his head fin, and I think just kind of shrink all of them back in, the 3 at the very least on his body, and he may take all of them down actually. I don't remember exactly, but they'll lower once he is capturable. So similar to Katku. Again, in that regard, very similar skeleton-wise and have a lot of similar aspects as well. All right, let's get a tackle forward here. Again, we're just keeping our distance, playing it safe. I probably do need to heal a little bit more. Is that him? No, I think that was still a left side one. I'm gonna stay right here. Actually, no, he did it to the right there. That was a right one, I think. So yeah, you can't feel too comfortable. Which, on one hand, I'm glad I wasn't wrong, but on the other hand, it would be nice if it was a predictable tail sweep. That does give you a better handle in the fight than just having to hope he doesn't pull out a tail sweep in the wrong direction. A little water beam. Couple boomerangs here. Obviously, you can get a head break. You can get a top fin break. You may even be able to break the wings. And the tail, you cannot cut the tail, though. It's probably just a fin break. A spoiler alert, we're not really going to be making any gear from this guy, so I don't really recommend actually worrying about it. Hopefully we can get this off. I may just be one shot here, but that's okay. I don't know what our water resistance is. It's 0, so it's just more that it's a charged up hyper beam than anything. Also, the bite puts you to sleep. Again, you don't want to be hit by that, but we're not close enough to his face half the time anyways. That's more of a ranged trap monster. The only reason that we're doing badly is because I'm not very good at the game, but that's all right. All right, here comes the standing water beam. We'll go for the stomach while he does that because the face is high up. You can reach it, but your boomerangs are probably set in a decent enough direction that you have the muscle memory just to aim upwards to where the face normally would be to hit the stomach instead. There's that sweeping beam in effect. Again, you just want to stay off to the left side. Now, if you're not able to, because he starts it and, you know, you can't get to the other side, then that's a different thing. You'll just want to watch for the tail. And really, the tail is just him pulling it back. I think it may look slightly different However, again, I could be wrong. I don't remember the exact things because you're not really required to as a cat, because you can just kind of press the B button and evade all danger. I'm going to go ahead and Soothing Roll there. I don't know if my iframe's in there to be hit by that second tail sweep. However, it is safer to just Soothing Roll, especially when it's free. All right, it's going to dash forward. There we go. And maybe he only does the right side one when he finishes that little tackle there. I'm not 100% for certain. There's the back fin being broken. He's doing his little standing water beam again, so I'm just going to punish him. However, he does pull that forward. Again, I'm more used to being at range. I'm trying to push this along a little bit faster, though. That's fine. And obviously, if you have the better Thunder weapon, you're using that here, so you'll be getting an even faster time. If you have Thunder Boost, if you have Weakness Exploit, it's also going to be making it go a lot faster. So that's something else you don't really have to worry about either. You'll be getting a lot more flinches and maybe even some topples, depending on how often you're actually hitting the legs. But we are past the 10-minute mark, so ideally he should be close. However, I didn't lose an acorn on the test hunt, so maybe I'm just being that bad. Also, you can aim your regular boomerangs as well, but this isn't as effective whenever he's farther out. And also, he'll move a lot more, which you're not wasting gauge to use them, so you may as well. But it won't be really as effective as being able to aim for hit zones and stuff with the Mega Boomerang, because that one doesn't have as much of a hit cap as your regular ones do. There's a water beam, dodge to the right. That way, if he does shake it, we just get the adept anyways. There he goes, limping. Try to dash forward here, catch up to him. Now, he's not really too quick to move. So even when he does start limping, it's more or less just that he's showing you that he's limping and not that he's fixing to move immediately. So you should be fine to deal some more damage to him. There's a face break, finally. Dodge forward here. Not dodge forward, but slide forward. You can actually lunge and not do that. He may be trying to leave now, finally. But he could also just be aiming a beam. Again, it's kind of hard to tell with him. He's not the most tail-heavy monster. He does kind of just like to do things on a whim. But that's just classic Plesioth. You kind of have to keep that in mind when you are fighting him, because it can be a bit of a problem if you're just kind of running in and hoping he's going to give you a bunch of very slow tails. Because a lot of his slow tails are just the attack itself. And hoping whether or not you're at range. Went back into rage mode there. And you can tell when he goes into rage mode if he's like in the middle of an animation and he just jerks up suddenly and kind of looks around like he's confused. I'm gonna look for maybe one more chance to use Boomerang. Never mind. There we go. Again, very quick hunt. I'm very surprised that he only has 14,000 HP. Again, 14,440 I think is the exact. Because you would think he would have more, especially for how large he is, but no, he goes down pretty quickly and he's fairly painless. Again, I lost an acorn, but that's just more or less me not being very smart in my play. Either way, I'll go ahead and finish carving him up. You get 4 carves with him, and I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub. We'll go ahead and look at the weapon that, like I said before, we're not actually going to be making. I want to say it is a purple one, maybe. No, it is not. It's right at the edge of the pink ones. Purple, kind of an in-between. But like I said before, we're not going to be making it, but it is a sleep weapon. The F Plesioth board, Cross R. I'm going to try to call it Cross R from now on, because that is, I think, technically how you're supposed to pronounce it, but it is easier to say XR because those are the letters. Either it's a sleep weapon, not much on the melee side at the very least, only 18 with 210 melee raw and only blue sharpness. I do not think sharpness affects status specifically. I think it's the same all the way around for status. It's just element that it affects, and raw, of course, as well. So you're not losing out on anything with the blue sharpness for the sleep element specifically, but you are losing out on it on the raw side, which isn't great if you don't have element. You also get a measly 5 defense, which means absolutely nothing. And then it's even worse on the boomerang side with only 14 sleep. So yeah, you're not going to be using this. While the Night Cloak weapon is not better on the melee side, it's much better on the boomerang side. You get more sleep element, 10 more raw, and you only lose 10% affinity. I think it is negative 10% on the boomerang side. And while this weapon itself is not great, it will put monsters to sleep a decent amount of times. So if you're running sleep bombing on G-rank quests with 3 other people who can actually use bombs because you can't, could be useful. Not really sure if it's going to beat out actual other weapons at all, especially the, you know, right element option, because, well, yes, sleep damage is good. That does lose effectiveness over time, and you also have to worry about having other people coordinate placing bombs and whatnot. And I just feel like it's probably more useful if you don't want to go into the sleep play style, and also easier to just think of to use the correct element option. And in solo play, again, obviously you're not going to be using this because you're the only one who can use bombs at all. And yes, bombs will use from the boomerang side if its raw is higher. If you are using a pure bombing build, you're not using your main weapon. And even if you were using it, it's not a great hybrid option because your raw is pretty low compared to your other actual bomb options that you would use for pure raw and whatnot. Rambling out of the way, we can go ahead and look at the armor, which as always looks pretty weird, but it's only 142. As you go down the lists to the G3s and whatnot, they're going to get worse and worse. So these are quite essentially worthless, honestly, considering the fact that if you're just using it for the looks, then you're just going to make the regular piece anyways and not really think about actually having the hyper version, because you don't have to have the hyper version to unlock it. All right, I switched to the Soul Seer weapon, and we'll go ahead and take on our next quest, which is kind of a part of a quest chain. The quest called It's a Miner's Life has us hunting a Hyper Lavasioth in the volcano. To do this quest, you first have to go to Hub 3-star and get the quest. I have no idea where you get it from, but it was just kind of sitting here. It's from the Funky Feline. It's the cat in Poke Village with the afro and the sunglasses. And you'll have a quest for a Astalos in Hub 3-star. It'll be a Poke request, and it's hunting one in the marshlands. Once you do that, you'll go back to him, and he will give you a quest in G2-star called Afro Soul is a Way of Life. Has you hunting another Lavasioth in the volcano. This is your G-rank Lavasioth quest that isn't tied with another monster. There is one, I believe, in either G4 or G3 that has you hunting a Lavasioth and a Rathalos together. But that's the one you want to do. Once you get that one done, this next quest will just kind of unlock naturally. You don't have to go and ask anyone for it. And it will be the quest for Hyper Lavasioth. Go ahead and take the quest. I did switch to Flash Bombay instead of Go Fight Wind. I'm hoping it'll help out a little bit more here. And we'll head on out. Alright, so Hyper Lavasioth is much tankier than his aquatic brother. 16,000 and I think 600 health around there, which is, you know, 2,000 more at least. And his hit zones are not, I want to say, as squishy as regular Plesioth. So obviously any parts that are applied with hyper, they're going to get weaker. But the face and the fins are the only weak spots for blunt and cutting weapons. And I want to say only the face for shot type weapons, but shot type weapons have the better hit zone on the face as opposed to having it spread out between the fins on the body specifically and the face. And it's only those arm fins. It's not the ones on top either. On the flip side, your elemental hit zones are actually matching for the face at the very least, which is going to be 10 for ice, thunder, and then water, which is what we're using. On the back, however, which is just kind of that little middle section up top, that would be considered a 30 hit zone for water element, but a 35 hit zone for both cutting and blunt. I do believe the other elements are slightly weaker also on the back. So you don't want to go for those other elements if you do want to aim for the back. The back is easier to hit because you don't always have to be aiming for it. The tail also, I believe, takes 30 water element on, you know, just the standard spots. And of course, it'll also take more damage if it is applied with hyper, which is nice as well. But that makes it pretty easy to hover a Mega Boomerang into his body. Yes, you will be getting the worst 35 hit zone and you won't be applying the water element to it. However, if you are clipping the fins, which are actually pretty large hitbox wise, so it's actually fairly generous and actually clipping through that. you'll still be getting a decent amount of damage off. Now, when his face is charged, as per usual, a lot of his projectiles will get larger. And G-Rank Lavasioth is very special in that you remember those little Plesioth tackles I was talking about earlier? Well, now this guy can just defy all of the laws of physics and just kind of skid into a wall and turn around on a dime. It's very weird, very off-putting, not the most fun thing to try to avoid. So if you do avoid it, don't pull out a Mega Boomerang or anything because you're just going to have to dodge it again. So just like throw out one uncharged boomerang or something and then be prepared to actually dodge something else. Also, the other wonderful thing about Lavasioth is that instead of going in the water, he will just go in underground, which is a lot more annoying because you cannot hit him in under the ground and you have to wait for him to come up. Sometimes he's really nice and he only does one attack and he'll, kind of poke up and let you deal damage to him. Sometimes he'll go for 3 or 4 attacks where he'll just kind of pop up, do something, and then go right back in under the ground where you can't hit him at all. So it can be annoying. Just, be prepared for the long haul. A lot of his attacks do a very large amount of damage. As you can see there, the fins do still count as a hitbox on the tackle, which does make sense, but it does provide a very long thing for you to get away from. He's also, of course, very large, so unless you get a mini crown, it's also going to be harder to just position out of the way of his attacks. His hip check is a lot worse than Plesioth's because he's lower to the ground, so that means they're not going to be going over you, and also it takes less time. Not a lot less, but less time for it to come out. So if you do try to dodge out of something to prepare to throw another dodge out to actually adapt to the hip check, you're going to be hit by it because you don't have enough time to actually dodge out of the way there. The tail is a safer spot to dodge into if you just want to position. However, you may not be able to get that off because he will kind of aim it a lot more than Plesioth has to. Because while Plesioth is larger and has a larger hit area of it, he won't aim it like Lavasioth does here because it's more or less just kind of a general crowd control, I guess, thing if you want to consider monsters moves like that. This is the one attack, or not the one attack, but this is the little chance you get to actually deal damage, and then he'll just go right back into the ground. He has a couple of things he can do. Most of them, you're fine if you just stay at a distance and watch for what he's going to do. Like that there, he shot a powder stone that split into 2, or actually 3, so you're just going to try to get behind it. Think of getting behind a Rathalos's exploding fireball or something, where it fans out more the further away it gets instead of behind it. So it's a lot safer to just stay behind it there and dodge the initial one than to try to dodge the other hits that kind of wildly spray out. Another one you can do is where he just pops out of his little hole in the ground and jumps back in to create a large spray of stuff. It's kind of similar to that little powder stone spray in that regard, except it kind of spreads out further and you're less likely to be hit by it, but it will still do a lot of damage. It's going to jump out of the ground here. I do have a lot of gauge, so I probably need to use this. So I will try to use this here. Maybe that'll go off. That did not. Awesome. I don't know if he's going to try to swim again. Hopefully not. I don't think he'll just swim intermittently in a zone. I think he only uses that for changing areas. Thankfully. Would be really annoying if he just kept doing it, but that's kind of why he has the underground stand-in for Plesioth's water shenanigans. Again, I find those to be worse, but I guess it probably would be better than having to hang at the edge of the lava and actually attack him because he is smaller. He's, I guess, girthier would be the word for it, or stout, right? Because he's not necessarily, Plesioth's skinnier. But I guess the idea of him being skinnier is that he takes more damage from stuff. Meanwhile, this guy's just kind of a walking tank. All right, he's going to run around here. And you're just watching for where that big one appears. Sometimes he'll just run all the way across the map. And again, he will shoot out pretty far. So you still do want to dodge into that stuff. And again, even with the fire resistance that I do have, he's still dealing lots of damage. The main problem we're having here is that we just don't really have that many options for Mega Boomerang, which is why I would hope that I could get some Flash Bomb Bays off, but it's not really working out very well. All right, maybe this one here. I just hope it doesn't explode too close to me. I don't think that one worked either. Yeah, he's just kind of squirrely all over the place due to how his attacks work, so it may not work out as well. If you do want to get a KO, Mega Boomerangs are really going to be your main way of getting it. If you're not wanting to constantly be in front of them where you're, in danger like that. Because again, off to the side, you're going to force more head turns that will give you more damage options to either just hit the body or the face whenever it does turn into you. But your Mega Boomerangs are going to be applying a lot more KO, which are easier to get if the monster's in place, which, is obvious. Like, okay, I get the KO. That makes it easier to hit his face with Mega Boomerang, but you've already gotten the KO, so there's no status actually being applied there. That maybe would be one. I don't recommend throwing a Mega Boomerang out unless you really have the initiative on him. You have to predict that, though, whenever he does just kind of poke out of the ground and look around. If he does it, then you're just going to miss it. And if you do it too late, then you're just going to miss it. So it's a very tight thing. Here's this weird turning tackle here. He actually finished it early there, thankfully, so I don't have to worry about him coming around and hitting me. And I will use that to actually apply big boomerangs here. Throw a couple here. He's going to actually look here, which is good. This will be a chance for a Mega Boomerang. Again, same thing as Plesioth. Whenever he goes into rage mode, he's just going to kind of look around like he's lost and then go into actually doing his rage attacks. I'm very surprised that worked. Unfortunately, the act of me turning the camera did aim the Mega Boomerang into the ground, which made it fly back very quickly, as opposed to actually, going full distance. There's the spreading also acting a bit weird. Again, it can curve and hit you in weird spots. The hitboxes are large and they still deal a lot of damage. I'm not a big fan of this fight. Is it the worst fight in the world? No, I'd rather fight him than Crystal Beard. Like, that's a pretty low bar, though. I don't think you want to be compared to Crystal Beard at all, but it's a lava monster. It's very tanky. While its hit zones aren't the worst in the world, it still does just take a lot of damage, which isn't that great. And it's slow, is annoying, moves around a lot with the slide that is very similar to Uragon's rolling attack. At the very least, he didn't steal Ignactor's lava armor mechanic like he does in World. That would just make it even worse. So now you have to wait for him to dig in under the ground. So you can look at the bright side at the very least there, but it's kind of sad if you have to start pulling from future games to be like, well, at least it doesn't have this. There's the hip check. Again, it just comes out so quick compared to Plesioth's. And it curves. It curves so much, it moves a lot as well, which is surprising. Again, Plesioth's has a large hitbox, but it doesn't move as much as Lavasioth's does. That may hit me. Okay, we're good. At the very least, those aren't that large of a hitbox. I'm going to wait for him to turn around because he will just try to hit you there. If you do walk in one direction, you should be fine to avoid that. But it really just depends on the angle that he starts it with, because sometimes you won't be fine, depending on how much space you actually have to run around in. And some of these areas can get a little cramped on the walls, so you don't want to be too close to the walls whenever he does start doing his stuff, which obviously, you don't want to be doing that with a very large monster anyways. Getting a lot of flinches here. I believe the face is broken, which is good. It's going to go in underground. I'm going to go ahead and pop this and just make sure it can't hurt me or anything. He will take damage from them. I did not see how much damage it was dealing to him, but I did get a flinch when he jumped into one of them, which is not bad, but I doubt it's really dealing that much damage because it hardly dealt any damage from what I remember to Pisarios or Gravios, which those were the standing ones. They weren't like active like that, but still I have a feeling they just don't deal that much damage. There's the little fish slam. Again, not as bad as the just standing powder storm fireball thing because it's really stationary compared to the rest of his attacks. So you can actually just kind of move around it, but you don't want to be caught off guard by it. There's also a slam he's not really been doing that much, and hopefully he does it, but it's where he'll jump into the air and he'll slam down really quick, a lot quicker than you would expect. And it causes a fairly large tremor around him. It's pretty easy to get once you actually, notice the tell for it. But until then, you do want to be careful because it can blindside you. Not necessarily to hit you, but to knock you out of a Mega Boomerang or something. This may hit me. Yeah, that's okay though. We do have our defense buffs up, so it's not going to be dealt that much damage. And we get a KO, which is really good. Go ahead and try to pierce it down his body here. The neck also is okay. It's around a 43 hit zone, I think. Something like that. So not quite a weak spot, but it still is slightly better than the back hit zone. but it doesn't share the water weakness that the back does have. I think it probably about evens out there, especially if you're using a whole bunch of just uncharged ones, where the uncharged boomerangs don't actually get the water, or the charged ones don't get the water element increased on it, or any element for that matter. But you're getting more of them out in a shorter period of time. It's just that they don't go as far, and the raw motion value increased, while it doesn't look like much, is still fairly important and will take your damage up quite a bit as long as you have the time to do it. Obviously, if it's between hitting the boomerang or charging the boomerang, you'd rather hit the boomerang. But there are some scenarios where you would probably just think, okay, well, I should have been positioned better for that, instead of just kind of chucking stuff randomly. I don't even know if you can flash him, because that went right in front of his face and he didn't react to it, so maybe you can't. Okay, I guess not. I don't know why I thought you could flash him. I mean, he seems like he would be a flashable monster. Maybe his eyelids are just so scarred over from swimming in lava. Flashes aren't really that much brighter in comparison, so fair enough. I'm sure Plesioth can be affected by it, though. He's being very annoying right now with his little flops. I'm probably stunned. Nope, not yet. Getting very close to it, though, probably, so I'm going to go ahead and Soothing Roll just so I don't get stunned randomly. Though I am pretty close to actually losing an acorn, or another acorn. And we are past the 15-minute mark. Again, showing just how much longer he does take the fight. He's not even limping yet. Looks like he's probably just moving the area. So I will try to meet you whenever something else interesting happens, because not really much does. There's the slam. Again, comes down very quickly compared to what you would expect. If you're in the middle of a boomerang toss, like right at the start of it, you probably won't have time to evade it. But if you just ended one or something like that, then you can wait and actually hit him on the down take, or just dodge it if you absolutely want to. Also, something I did forget to mention is that since the tackle is one continuous long attack, you can still parry it with your adept dodge and avoid it altogether after that. You don't have to worry about being hit by the follow-up or anything if he just does magnetize to you, which he tends to do. So if you want to forget about it entirely and you have the option to adept dodge it, then yes, you can just run straight into it. However, you don't always have that option. And if you do want to try to maybe get some hits on him while he is moving around earlier, then you won't have that luxury as well. Again, it all depends on if you want to dodge into it or not. If you do, then you're going to have a lot less issues in the long run there. And maybe if you get it started earlier enough and he continues it long enough, it's really kind of a risk there. You'll be able to get a Mega Boomerang out while he's just kind of circling around you and not really dealing any damage to you. So really up to you. He's finally limping. Not sure if I'll be able to catch him before he moves to the next area, so I guess I will meet you there. Hopefully he turns his face towards me. That's why I held that for a long time. He's going to enrage too, which will be a great chance for me to get this off. He may head turn here. He didn't do it fast enough at the very least, and there we go. Finally, took 20 minutes. Again, I know it's weird to say, but I prefer Plesioth over Lavasioth any day, because it just is Plesioth, but worse in different regards. Yes, the water stuff isn't great on Plesioth, but he doesn't really do it that much in recent games compared to the amount he did it before. So either way, I'm going to go ahead and finish carving him up, and I'll meet you back at base. All right, back to the hub, and on the flip side, compared to Plesioth at the very least, the Lavasioth mace, which I believe is called the Lava Mace, if I can find it, the Lava Mace Cross R is an option for a melee fire element weapon. While the affinity is negative 15% on the melee side at the very least, you have 45 fire element, which is pretty good, 210 raw, which is also pretty good. Worst part is the blue sharpness. It's not great. However, the element really does help it. And if you compare it to the regular lava mace, it will be 10 more raw and 25 more element, but you trade off the white sharpness. I don't think the white sharpness is making up for a whole 25 element. That's really good. So yeah, you're not using this. You're going to be using the other one, if anything. And it would probably be more of a side grade to something like the Dread King weapon or whatnot, just depending on the target, whether or not they're weaker to element than raw, or you want that affinity boost or whatever you want. But it would be something to think about On the armor side of things, I think you can probably expect the same thing. The Lava Helm Cross R has only 146 defense, so you're not going to be making it for its defense, but if you like the looks of it, I think the helmet looks nice, but I think the body armor's more like a minimal armor. Not really. Not really my cup of tea on the armor side, but the helmet looks pretty nice at the very least, and it does have a nice little shine to it. But again, not something you're making specifically for the armor, especially since it needs hyper scraps. Either way, there we go. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider leaving a comment below, and maybe even consider subscribing. Until next time, bye.